You've had a very vast career, and I'm wondering if you think that because you haven't held elected office before, that gave you an advantage in the election. And do you think that's going to help you ultimately in your term as governor?
Well, I think one thing I remind people is that even when I was running, I would say on the campaign trail, do you know what the states of Connecticut, New Jersey, at that time, Maryland, Virginia, all had in common? And the answer was the first elected office that the governor of those states held was governor. Because I think when people are looking at governors, they look for chief executives. They look for people that have a history of running things. And I would say that, that I would put my executive experience against anybody else in this race because I've had the chance to lead soldiers in combat as a paratrooper and the captain of the United States Army. I've had a chance to lead when I started a successful small business that was helping students who are first generation students go to and through higher education. I've had a chance to lead when I ran a poverty fighting organization where just in my time as CEO, we raised and allocated over $600 million going to the most effective organizations in the country that was focusing on ending poverty. And so I think that has really given me an understanding of not just what it takes to be an executive and how to lead, but also how to work across lines. And I remember, we would go campaigning, and I would go all around the state, and I go to a lot of areas where there weren't a lot of Democrats. And people would say, you're going to a lot of places where there's not a lot of Democrats. And I say, yeah, but there's a lot of Marylanders, and I plan on being their governor too. And that's exactly how I've begun the administration. It's exactly how our team maneuvers and moves. And it's why I think even in the early days of our administration, why we've been so successful in order to get bipartisan approval for a lot of the measures that we're pushing forward.
And if you weren't governor today, what would you be doing?
It's a good question. And it's one I haven't thought about in a couple of years. Because once I decided that I was going to run for governor, I put out of my mind what was going to happen if I didn't win.
Yeah,
very fair. Only thing I was focused on was if we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And we are going to run harder than everyone else. We're going to outwork everybody. We're going to go everywhere. And I think people saw that, where even if you look at the election results that we had, we ended up winning with the largest margin in close to 40 years. I received more individual votes than any person who'd run for governor in the history of the state of Maryland. And the way we were able to do that was because we didn't just win a group, right? We didn't just win Democrats. We won Democrats, independents, and a good chunk of Republicans. We didn't just win African Americans. We won people across the board. We won people who said that crime was their number one issue. And we won people who said the economy was their number one issue. We won veterans and veteran families, which for a Democrat is very unusual. So we really ended up building a really powerful coalition that I think made our not just the run very successful, but I think which has really given us a lot of tailwind to make our administration very successful, and even in its early days.
I'd like to go more into that. Can you tell me more about this politics of the state? How did Maryland go from a conservative governor with Larry Hogan to getting the first Black governor in state history?
I think that the thing that I really wanted to do is, we staked our campaign where I said the North Star for our campaign is going to be work, wages, and wealth. We're going to create economic pathways. We're going to focus on economics because I knew that was going to be the core of everything we looked to get done. And in the first days of the administration, I said to the people of the state, we're going to make the North Star of this administration work, wages, and wealth. There's a measure of consistency that I've really tried to drive, and our administration has really tried to drive about the work that we're going to be able to do. And so when we talk about work, it means creating pathways to address the historic vacancies that we continue to see in the state of Maryland, where there's 10,000 vacancies in state government right now, where we have basic services that are not being performed because people are not performing them. And that's impacting everyone from public safety to unemployment insurance, to the Department of Parole and Probation and the Department of Corrections. So we have to be able to get people back to work. We have to be able to address the fact that Maryland right now, despite having remarkable assets, is currently 35th in this country in unemployment. If you look at economic activity, we're the 47th most difficult place in this country to start a business. That over the past 8 years, the national economy, national GDP has increased by 23%. Maryland's has increased by 11. So we're falling behind in the country over these past 8 years. And so my focus has been, we've got to get our economic engine going again in the state of Maryland. And that includes not just the work piece, also the wages piece. And that means being able to ensure that we are eliminating this idea that we have people who are working jobs, and in some cases multiple jobs, and still living at or below a poverty line, and increasing wages for our workers. And when we say wealth, it really means creating an ownership society, right? It means giving people the ability to own more than they owe, giving people the ability to pass something off to their children and grandchildren besides debt. And so if we can really focus on creating a pathway for work, wages, and wealth, this is going to be Maryland's decade. And I think that's really how we try to approach it. And I think that's why you saw the state in such an overwhelming fashion back our candidacy.